Ready? Okay, I'm going to call the regularly scheduled Select Board meeting of October 9th to order. And just for the audience who did not join us, we did a site visit of the Creek Road and left from the Recreation Center and toured all the way down through to where the East Middlebury River comes into the Otter Creek, and had the ability to see the erosion that's occurring and to help inform our discussions that will be occurring as to what the town does with Creek Road. So we did that before the Select Board meeting. Now for the Select Board meeting, I'd like to move to approve the agenda. Note that there is an addition to the agenda that was just dropped off, was item 15A, approval of the check warrants.
I'll move.
Second.
So I assume that's to move the amended agenda. And second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Next is approval of the minutes of our September 11th Select Board meeting.
Move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Are there any amendments or changes that are requested on those?
Nope, really good notes again.
It's become the standard.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Citizen comments. This opportunity, if there's something that's not on the agenda, if somebody's here, please.
I'm Dana Hart from across the sidewalk at the library. I had two quick updates. The first is
Did you use the?
an update on our focus groups that the trustees have been conducting since May, I think. We've done about 15. Some of them have been well attended, some less so. Farhad came to one with MCTV. It's been a really useful exercise for me. It's been productive. The facilitator and I are going to be putting together a summary of what we've learned. We'll present it to the trustees in hopefully January or February, and I'll share it with the Select Board as well. And at that point, the trustees are going to sort of dive back into the renovation and decide if they want to move forward with the plans that they have or if they want to reevaluate in light of what we've learned through this community engagement. So I know there hasn't been a lot of movement on that lately, but I wanted to let you know the trustees are going to be circling back to it soon, and they'll be in touch and communicate with you then. And I also wanted to say thank you very, very much for approving our permit to serve alcohol at the library. We had a really fun event for the Friends a few weeks ago. About 40 people came. It was well attended. It was fun. We had a nice toast with Prosecco, and it just was a nice way to get the supporters together and sort of build a sense of community among the library's friends. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Next item, I believe you're Matthew, are you? Okay, Matthew, we're going to take up your item if you want to come forward. And we're looking for approval of a request for a first-class liquor license and outdoor consumption permit for, is it Correnti LLC, doing business as the Arcadian Restaurant. And Chiefs Hanley and Shaw have noted that the premises are still under construction, and their recommendation is that we might look to approve the request pending a successful reinspection in November. So, pleasure of the board. Any questions that you have for Matthew also?
How soon do you open?
I was going to ask that.
We're shooting for mid-November.
Okay, we're shooting to be there.
Great.
Great.
Looking forward to it.
No, I think this is worthwhile, and wish you luck, so I would say I'd make the motion to approve the request for Parente LLC for a first-class liquor license and outside consumption permit for the Arcadian Restaurant located at 7 Bakery Lane, pending a successful re-inspections requisite in November.
Second.
Victor seconded.
Oh, I didn't hear him, sorry.
Moved and seconded.
Double second.
I think everybody's
Well,
anxious to have a meal.
There's enthusiasm for what you're doing.
Looking forward to cooking for you.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you, Matthew. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck, yeah.
Good luck.
Holmes.
Good evening. Thanks for seeing me.
So Holmes is coming to request the town of Middlebury to join with our adjacent towns of Cornwall and Bridport and advocating for safety improvements to Route 125 in the vicinity of Cider Mill Road. Basically, the stretch from when you leave for the college out through the Cider Mill Road is my understanding.
Yes, exactly.
Holmes drafted a letter, or actually, I think Adam drafted a letter, did he?
Yes, I did not draft the letter.
Yeah,
I
Adam
you
Luigi.
know,
He's got the
merely
ball rolling.
got the ball, just started the conversation. That's all.
And so Adam Luigi actually drafted a letter. I believe it was in the packet for everyone to read. This is on the heels of a very unfortunate fatal accident a couple of weeks back, and other accidents and near accidents on that same stretch of road that have cost lives. I think it's pretty well recognized that it's a dangerous stretch. Does anybody have any questions for Holmes, or do you have any statement you'd like to make, Holmes?
No, I think beyond the initial email that I sent Kathleen, which I think you're probably all privy to, yes, it was inspired recently by this tragic accident in September, but that follows also on the heels of another deadly accident about 15 years before. 16 years before, I think, in which a mother and two children were killed. That's been a tough stretch for a long time. Those two blind knolls. I know it's no easy work to just take them out. Obviously, this beginning of a long process, and I really appreciate everyone that I've spoken to being very open-minded to investigating whether or not we can turn it into a more safe spot. Accidents aside, we do have a lot of bikers and runners on that stretch as well. So I think it's really important that we take a look at what we can do.
Just meanwhile, I'd just like to encourage that one thing we could all do is slow down.
Absolutely.
And definitely make eye contact with each other. And we know that distractedness is a growing concern of all our users,
Right.
motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians
Absolutely.
alike. So
Yes, there are certainly some measures that could have been taken in this most recent accident that could have prevented it, of course. But I think the blind spots in the knoll also played a role as well. So, and that's all I had.
So I would like to make a motion
Okay.
to endorse and sign the joint letter to AOT Secretary Joe Flynn regarding the need for safety improvements to Route 125.
I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. In everybody's reading of it, was there any wordsmithing that anybody would look for out of that? Or are we okay? I think it
looks
draws
good.
attention to the severity of the risk that's presented there, and I think that's the intent of the letter, and asking for the state to look at it and take action, so.
Maybe if we can mention that accident that happened in September.
It's okay.
It's in here.
I didn't see in the Adams letter Is that the one that's going? No. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's in the first
Got it, yeah.
paragraph.
The only
Yeah.
comment I would have is that we don't talk about any possible short-term fixes like, requesting a decrease in the speed there, you know, and/or, Laura's suggestion for some alternate narrowing and of the road to slow people down. So while I don't disagree with this, I feel like it's a really long way out and don't know where it would be in the state's priority. And just thinking about what we might be able to ask V-Trans to do in the short term to encourage, you know, some reduction in the speed through that section, some increased requests for enforcement from whatever sheriff, state police, whatever needs to happen, and try to raise people's awareness in that section, in addition to also.
The visibility.
Sure.
Improving the visibility. So what Heather's talking about is striping the road so that the travel lane is more narrow, which slows people down.
Sure.
But that still doesn't address the visibility issue of that.
No,
noise.
it doesn't, but I think that's really important. I think if V-Trans could also take a look at maybe dropping the speed limit in the interim, 10 miles per hour, I think that would certainly not hurt anyone. But
So maybe we can make that recommendation, so, excuse me,
Suggesting something like that more immediate remedial conditions should be taken to
Until,
improve the safety of
Yeah.
the road. Yeah, I would think just one sentence should do it, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
not that we shouldn't still do this. In
No,
addition- yeah.
but I think certainly, yeah, this is the longer-term goal, but there are things could be done in between that,
Right, and that, yeah,
that would
It could-
remediate,
yeah, your sentence.
including signs saying dangerous and, you know, danger, and,
They
yeah, I
do
think
have,
that's great.
Sorry, they do have blind driveway. I don't know if they have blind hill.
well, they could, I'm sure that within their repertoire, they have
Some kind of
appropriate signs that could be used, yeah. So, I mean, I guess the suggestion would be that more immediate remedial steps to be taken to make it safer, and also to alert drivers that they ought to be on their guard, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree, and it could go naturally in the last paragraph, just before we thank them for their
Sure.
consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
who
Okay.
who made the motion on that?
I did.
Would you be interested in amending your motion to include that comment?
Yeah. What do you want in the comment? To take immediate steps.
To add a sentence addressing interim solution to mitigate the risk while they
Yeah. To
plan.
add interim solutions to mitigate the conditions.
I think we can work with Adam to get that inserted, maybe?
Yeah.
Everybody, so would you interested in seconding that?
Yep, I'll second that.
Okay. Any other comments? So if we take the amended motion, we're voting on to add a line and authorize me to sign for the select board. So all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Next on the agenda, and I don't think Amy came, but it's a request for a change order to a contract with the Northeast Archaeology Center for one additional day of field work on Middlebury River Flood Resiliency Project. And I talked with Heather when we were out doing the field study, and
Talked with Amy.
uh,
That's okay.
thank you. Amy did come, Heather is here. And And it was an oversight in the initial request, and so the change order, because it actually, the board awarded a $5,182 contract to conduct the mandated Phase 1 survey of archaeologically sensitive areas within the boundaries of the flood resiliency project. And when Amy was there, she reported to Kathleen that the scope of the study would need to be expanded to include a portion of temporary access road that had not originally been part of the defined project area. So that $1,599 they're looking for is the funds to cover that additional scope. Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the change order for the Phase 1 archaeological survey for the Middlebury River Flood Resiliency Project for a total cost of $1,599.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. Next is Judy.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. All right.
Hello.
Hey, Judy, how are you?
Hi. I came to see you with a request. It's informal at this stage. I'm not quite sure how to make it really formal, but I would like to if and when that's appropriate. And it's about the naming of the planned park that will be built at 20 Main Street, I think, when the dust settles after all the construction. We saw a letter from Victor Nuovo in the paper last summer suggesting that this park really should be named for Stan Lazarus and the Lazarus family, whose department store originally was on this site. And my husband and I decided to follow up on Victor's letter and see if we could just determine informally, really, if there was a lot of support for this name. So first of all, I put a post on Front Porch Forum just asking anyone who remembered the store, remembered Stan, and was in favor of naming the park for the Lazarus family to contact me by email. And then I sent an email to a lot of people, and it was just an off the top of my head list of people who I was sure would remember the Lazaruses and who I was sure still lived in Middlebury and whose email addresses I had. And I was just overwhelmed by the response. And it wasn't just people saying, okay, it was tremendous enthusiasm, people saying, my name, my spouse's name, my partner's name, I remember Stan, I remember Jean, I remember the store, and it was really a wonderful Middlebury institution, and it just should not be forgotten. And moreover, people wrote me stories and anecdotes about their memories of Stan and their memories of the store. And at the same time, Scott Needham started compiling a slightly more formal petition, actually collecting names and signatures, whereas I got them all by email. And between us, I think we now have about 100 individual names of people who are really very enthusiastic about this name for the park. Not a single person said no, not a single person said, I have a better idea, not a single person was unsure. A lot of people said that they would be very happy to contribute for signage at the park, even though there isn't really any firm idea yet, I think, of what it will look like and what the signage might be. So I wanted to give you my list of names and Scott's petitions, and a wonderful article by John Flowers that was in the July 26th Addison Independent giving a lot of background about the store and about the Lazaruses and about the effort to give the Lazarus name to the park. So that's as far as I've gotten with it, and I guess I leave it with you and just say that it seems to be a very popular request. I didn't try to get, and Scott didn't either, I don't think, to get a really exhaustive list of signers. It was pretty effortless. I think if we seriously tried to get everybody we knew who could sign on, and more than just Middlebury residents, people who live in the towns around Middlebury who kind of count as residents for purposes of shopping and dining and using the amenities, I think it would be many hundreds of people. And it's really clear that this would just be a very happy thing to do. It would really bring people together with a very good town memory. The thing it reminds me of most is an informal outdoor memorial service for Dr. Peters, a pediatrician, after he died, when everybody just gathered around and talked about memories of Dr. Pete. And it was just a wonderful uniting experience. And I sort of envision an opening of the park with the same sort of thing happening. And I think it would be a very good thing. So that's about it. Unless if Scott would like to say something?
I'll just say, I got my first job for Stan in the 7th grade at 50 cents an hour. Worked for him for 8 years, and it was just a great experience. He was a wonderful guy, wonderful family, and I also worked for Mike, where she, and I'm in total support of the center.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that he would want anything else added to the title of the park? I love the simplicity of Lazarus Park, but I didn't know, if
Well, it's just not Stan, it's Harry, his father.
No, I know, but would he want it Lazarus Community Park or Lazarus Gathering Park? Or was there any other qualifier word that you think he might like as part of the title? Or just Lazarus Park, just like we have Triangle Park, and we have Cannon Park, and now we have potentially Lazarus Park. But anyway, that occurred to me. I didn't know if there was any other adjective that we might tickle. Okay.
No, we didn't try anything else. We just.
I mean, I have to admit I'm partial. I love Stan Lazarus, and but I think it's not just a matter of the fact that he was a very kind man, and of course, the department store was so essential to the town's economy and to all of that. But he was a benefactor for so many people. I mean, there was the fact that that people would come in and buy shoes for their children and couldn't afford it, but Stan would charge it and then somehow lose the. I mean, he really did provide welfare in the richest way, and so that it's. The store was there. It had historic value in that sense, but to me, it's also this person who in fact was quite influential in the state. I mean, the legislature, he was assistant to Phil Hoff, and when he was governor, he was a state figure. And I mean, I think we have a tendency in this town to forget the past, and I think this is a part of the past that's worth remembering. And I would say the name itself, Lazarus, and then maybe a little indication as to what was there, and it could be done very briefly is important.
Well, we did discuss a little bit whether it should be just Stan Lazarus or whether it should be Lazarus. And I certainly would think that it should be the whole family, because even though Stan was the most visible member, it really was a family enterprise. And Jean was also someone who did a tremendous amount of work for the town.
Well, I think probably just the name Lazarus would be appropriate.
I was just thinking, because we've done a lot of visioning for that park, and if it had like a focus, which we still haven't identified for it, would we want to consider that somehow in the titling of the park? That's the only thing that occurred to me. That wouldn't take away from this, you know, you'd still retain Lazarus, but that's
Right.
the only thing that occurred to me.
Well, Peg Martin's suggestion was that we should have a statue of a shoe, like a man with a shoe. Because
I think you want a historical marker. That's
Right, I agree. I
That's what
wasn't,
you want, really.
yeah,
And it wouldn't require a lot.
right. And I think that it would be very easy to raise donations for it.
So, can I make a motion?
Please.
I'll make a motion to accept, with the board's appreciation, the citizens' petition in support of naming the park to be constructed at the completion of the bridge and rail project on the site of the former Lazarus department store property, Lazarus Park.
I'll second.
Why don't you go to the second part of it?
Do I have to do them as two separate
That's what we had envisioned, is two separate.
motions?
That was.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'd also like to move to warn a public hearing for 7:30 PM on Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, to take community testimony on the petition.
I'll second.
Second.
Farhad seconded that already, so moved and seconded. Just want to look at the. Okay. Wouldn't mind being there, because I think we're talking about, I can't be there on the 13th.
Isn't that the second Tuesday?
Hmm?
Isn't that our board meeting on that day?
We have a select board meeting
Oh, it's on that, okay.
that day.
So you'd rather,
So you wanna-
Would you be willing to do it for the 27th?
Sure.
that's, okay.
Would you like me to redo the motion?
If you could.
So I'll make a motion to warn a public hearing for 7:30 on Tuesday, November 27th, 2018, to take community testimony on the petition.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
We got all kinds of seconds tonight.
Second.
Okay, so, is that gonna work for everybody else?
Sure.
Okay. All right, moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much, Judy. I think
you.
that's, we're all, I think, like-minded, and it does need to go through the public process, but the timing is perfect, because we're going through developing what's that park look like, and I think having the two discussions together is probably appropriate time to do that, so, thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks very much.
Next, Rural Worthington, on. Worthington on, oh yes, this is the Smith Housing Limited Partnership. Yes, thank you. Okay. So, Hope is, I guess maybe you can fill us in here.
Sure. Hope has decided not to do affordable housing anymore, as far as I'm aware of, and so they're assigning their interest on all their partnerships they have with Housing Vermont to Housing Vermont. So we have, 6 total partnerships that we're going to be taking sole GP ownership of. That's not going to last very long. Before the end of the year, we're going to, am I making this too confusing? Sorry, we're going to assign the Hope's previous interest to Addison County Community Trust. This is the first step in the process, having Hope exit the partnerships.
So we would exit them, and then we would have to go back, and I was wondering what was gonna go on with this, because it wasn't clear to me, long-term vision there,
Yes,
so.
yes, the vision is Addison County Community Trust is the housing, the local housing, affordable housing trust.
Yeah,
So they're going to be taking over the partnerships that Hope is not interested in being in anymore.
But you'll oversee it through the end of this year.
We're a general partner. Currently, we're co-general partners with Hope.
Okay.
We'll continue to be co-general partners. There's just going to be a momentary blip while their interest is assigned to us. And I have paperwork that got in a little bit too late to Kathleen to show that Addison County Community Trust is going to be coming in on that.
Okay.
Housing Vermont, yeah, we're not, we call the other people our local partners. We're statewide. We'd rather have somebody a little bit more central to the area, to the locality, be a force.
I'll make the motion
Okay.
that we authorize our town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the consent to withdrawal general partner allowing Bristol Affordable Housing, which we call, that's
Hope,
Hope,
yeah.
to withdraw from the Smith Housing Limited Partnership.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any questions? I think that, go ahead.
So this doesn't change our area's interest and efforts in maintaining and,
No, my hope is it improves it
Okay.
because Addison County Community Trust is their, housing is their thing.
Their
Housing
focus.
was not the focus
Yeah.
of Hope. So we've been working closely with Addison County Community Trust to improve their, I don't know, maybe you've seen some of the work. We had a new roof put on Stone Hill. We've been working with them to improve some of their holdings and we're hoping to continue that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, they're managing some of that property now.
Yes, they currently manage all of it.
Yeah,
All of it's already managed by Addison County Community Trust. It's just there was a little bit of
manage it more.
yeah, they'll just have a bigger interest in managing it.
Okay.
And so yes, I might not be able to get here for the next meeting when the ACCT comes in to answer some questions about that. But hopefully I've explained it
Yeah.
well enough that when that paperwork gets on the docket, you guys will
I think I understand it now, at least. I was curious what was going on with our local affordable housing.
Yeah, no, it's really not gonna change. It's been operating this way for a few years anyway, and it's not gonna change. It's just on paper.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now it's, we've got some time to talk about observations and review of the Creek Road site visit and discuss our next steps. So I'll open it up to the board. Point to, Benj had done an analysis that was in our packet of some of the options. Thoughts of the board? Observations out there?
The observation I see is it continues to deteriorate. The river's doing what rivers do. It's, and while I understand the value to some out there, I think it's one of those things that's like painting the deck chairs on the Titanic. I think it's just gonna continue to deteriorate, and so we have to make the decision whether we spend a sizable amount of limited money that we have on this, or whether we reclassify. I'm not convinced I personally see the benefit of putting a lot of money into it, because it's gonna continue. And so, I appreciate the chance for seeing it. I think Bill and Dan did a fantastic job of taking us through the history of the road and the condition, and we can't change what the river's doing to it.
So right now, it's a class 3 road.
Right.
And if we go to a class 4, if we were to look at downgrading the classification, when you go to a class 4, what does that change? I know we talked about you would lose the opportunity to get federal funding through FEMA and the result of some disaster or something.
I would
what
have to
else?
look more into it, but some towns don't maintain Class 4 roads at all. They don't provide any maintenance. It's kind of travel at your own risk.
But you could leave it you could leave it open.
Most class 4 roads aren't maintained at all in the winter. And there's usually no, like Kathleen said, no.
And what are we getting for funding as it a class 3 road? What comes in right now for funding on that stretch of
I
class
think
3 road?
it's about $2,000 or $3,000 a mile that we get on that
Each year?
each year.
And that was how many miles that we?
About three?
Three-
Three, would you say? Of the Dean, I'm looking at you, Dean, to see how many miles of road that is closed there. 3?
What, the portion that's closed?
Yeah,
Say that's a
mile. Mile?
Sorry, but.
A mile.
Mile between the gates?
Mile?
So 2,000,
2 or 3,000.
mile and a half.
2 or 3,000.
2 or 3,000, okay.
Okay.
So are we only talking about reclassifying just that section?
I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Still a lot of,
If we are only talking about that, then we still need to address issues on what I consider the north section, that has way more, need of way more repairs than the section that we would declassify.
and we're held to a higher standard on class 3 road because of the state funding? Is that the situation?
Well, the state funding and the state standards for a class 3 road. I think we adopt the state road standards for,
We did, yeah.
Well, it seems like a compromise. We definitely see that people enjoy it as a jogging path and a cycling path, and they like how pastoral it is right now. And we are trying to see if there's a compromise that we could reach where there could be limited farm equipment use of the road while preserving it primarily as a recreational path or road, and recognize that seasons will prevail, including maybe some extreme raining where you wouldn't want to use the road, or winter. So it seems acceptable to me to reclassify it as a class 4 road and take care of the part that we have to at the front, so that, vehicles can safely access that portion of the road that need to. The Actor Bus Transportation Center, for example.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly to
Mhm.
those facilities.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, so how far down do we go, basically taking it to Mark Perrin's site? Do we, how far along do we do it? I think to the actor site, sure, but what about beyond that?
so one thing, regardless of whether you reclassify that road or not, the road is in need of repair.
Yeah.
And if you reclassify the road and the town no longer takes any responsibility for repairing the road, who does that then fall, the responsibility for those repairs fall on? If you want to maintain it as a walking, biking trail, and the river continues to wash it away, who's going to pay for those repairs?
Well, we would have to prioritize it as a town. You're right.
Okay, so I would strongly disagree spending town money on a walking, jogging, bike path when we can't afford to spend the money to maintain it open for car travel. Because you declassify the road to a class 4 road, you go travel to Shoreham, Bridport, where they have some of these class 4 roads. Springtime comes and people go mudding on the roads and they tear the roads all up, and the town doesn't maintain them. And there are property owners along that entire stretch of road, whether it's farm whether it's house, whatever, that have a right to access their property. And now we're gonna put the burden of maintaining that road on them. And I guess I'm not okay with that. And I don't know what the answer is. I do think there is some merit in considering moving the road over slightly in the areas where the bank is sloughing. If you look on the other side of the road, in most of those places, there is plenty of room to shift the road. We have not tried in any location on any river road in the town, the proposed bank stabilization that Landside proposed in their work. There was a very specific fabric layered vegetation design in that has not been done anywhere in this town. So we don't have any history on how it will hold up. It was, I think they gave pictures and referenced places in other parts of the state where they've done it. You know, Dan and Bill comment that 25 feet isn't enough. And if nothing is done to the riverbank, then maybe they're probably right. But if we do shift the road a little bit and do try some of this bank repair, maybe 25 feet is enough. I don't know the answer to that. I'm guessing. And there's no question that it will require money. No question. But I'm not interested in making it a trail or a walking bike path and then still having to put money into it from the town.
You're envisioning just pedestrians and bikes on it?
If
But
that's
if you
what we're-
downgraded to a class 4, you could still have that open, right?
Yeah, but who's gonna make, where's,
Well, we would still spend whatever money, do whatever maintenance. I don't see where that changes. I think what it changes is what standard we have to hold it to. If we're only getting $6,000 a year, and you look at the cost of repairs, are we better off at just accepting a lower standard for a road and trying to reduce the amount of traffic, the people who use it just for a shortcut, but keeping it open for all the people who need to use it?
and so what does that mean? Because typically a class 4 designation means there's no winter maintenance, there's no summer maintenance.
We're not obligated to it, but I would think we could still keep it plowed. And that would give us the ability, if we wanted to shift the road, these are the things I wish Dan was here, because I don't have this, I don't know, but does that allow us to shift the road and not have to have, I'm seeing the difference in the cost to construct a sidewalk when we get state funding versus what if I would do if I was a contractor and came in and do it, and it's like twice the cost, or, it's ridiculous how long it takes and additional costs. When we are accepting $6,000 of state funding, or is it tripling our cost to shift that road if we just are trying to have basically a class 4 road, and we don't have to build to any specific standard, but we want to keep a road open? Is it more practical? I think you gotta, if it's a question of $1.5 million to keep a class 3 road open, or go into a trail where it's just walking, biking, and I have an option to have something in between, I might consider that in between.
So it would be interesting to hear from staff, because my perception, and I could be wrong, is that the way the road exists currently, it's not safe for travel, and they don't want anybody on the road. So if no work is done to the road, the current conditions, I don't know, when you classify it a class 4 and you put a sign on, travel at your own risk, does that?
So I think this was the type of question that I was hoping that we could identify tonight, so we could do some research and come back. With that, I think I have your concern about what are the maintenance standards, if any, for class 4? What is the town's liability on keeping it open?
I guess if the property owners are gonna be responsible for maintaining the road so that they can access their property, I would be more in favor of making it a private road. And not that that's what I want, but if they're gonna be responsible for the cost, then it should be their road.
Well, that would defeat the purpose of having it as a recreational
Yes.
egress, unless,
So-
unless the Middlebury Area Land Trust negotiated that as they have for the trail around Middlebury with those property owners, which they could.
Right, but you don't put, I don't provide a trail through my property along the river for everyone to use, and
No, you might not, but they might.
But if they might, that creates liability, right? Who will be liable for?
right, but it's a
what
private
happens?
road.
Yeah, if it's a
And-
private road, who will be liable?
And technically, to access private road, you have to have landowner permission.
Well, they are doing that. The Middlebury Area Land Trust negotiates that right now.
I just, so, you make it that road's been there since the 1700s, and for as long as I've been here, farm equipment, cars, bikers, walkers, runners have all used that road with no issues
Conflicts.
or concerns or anything. And I guess I'm just not okay with downgrading it for only certain, so access is only for certain users.
Okay, let's assume we do have a Class 3 road. Then what are we looking at? Then we have to budget and prioritize for the maintenance of this road, which is a jewel. It's a recreational jewel, no doubt about it. We saw that tonight, for sure. Lots of joggers and cyclists this evening, and beautiful scenery. So I guess, yeah, we're back
Right.
to
There weren't
square one.
lots, However, there weren't lots of people, but I think it is a very scenic spot, and it's very nice to have it. But I think geologically, even just moving the road 25 feet in, the geology is the same there. You simply are putting off a problem that's going to arise again. And particularly if we are in for more frequent storms, I think we could be faced with this ongoing task. So it seems to me putting a lot of money into this is really throwing good money after bad, and I just don't see the prudence in it. And I think the use of it for jogging, for biking, agricultural use, I understand that's needed. But any other vehicle, motorized vehicle, it seems to me, no, I don't see that the town should be spending money to maintain that, particularly of this magnitude. And particularly because you're not going to solve it even if you spent $1.5 million. It will put it off till the next generation, after socking the current taxpayers with an expense, and where there are other needs for that money, like sidewalks and such like. But
So declassifying the road is not gonna take away the cost needed to maintain that road as a walking, biking, jogging path. Everybody does recognize that, right?
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's
So
your point.
declassifying it from a class 3 to class 4
Yeah.
does
Where you were
not,
talking
does
about
not
not using
change
the
that.
road.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So what you're saying is, you're talking about discontinuing.
Discontinue maintaining the right-of-way, yeah.
You would turn
I-
it into a trail then.
No, he's talking about discontinuation.
Well, do you want to maintain the right of way, or,
Yes.
so he's talking about downgrading it to a
Right,
trail?
and I would adamantly oppose such a thing, because the property owners still
Well, it's
have the.
obvious, yeah.
The property, regardless of anything, the property owners still have the right to access their property.
Correct.
And you're in discontinuing the road, you're taking away the ability, and now that it becomes entirely on the, maintaining the access to their property becomes entirely their
Burden.
expense and their burden.
they-
So in that case, given that the property owners will take the burden to maintain access to their property, I would advocate for it to then become private, and no one has access unless you have private property owners' permission. I think you can't, I'm sorry, I just don't, I can't agree with that. Surprise, surprise.
It's all right.
So, let's kind of fast forward 50 years, and owners have been maintaining that for 50 years. What do you have there? I mean, you have a farm road probably after that 50 years of use. You don't think that by downgrading to a class 4 and holding ourselves to at least a standard of keeping the road open, that we could do that within our budget?
Oh, I don't know, but I still think it's gonna require money, and if the
Requires
select board is.
But do you have to,
I mean,
well, you're saying that the landowners are gonna solve it. They aren't gonna come up with $1.5 million.
I don't think it would take, I disagree with that, just,
So what do you think it is?
I don't know, but I don't think it's that.
I guess that's what I'm looking for. What's the
I don't know. I
middle,
mean,
what's the middle
It
ground?
depends on what you wanna do, but I don't think we've ever had any pricing or any history on the proposed bank stabilization in the land sides.
Landslide or pathways?
I'm sorry, I got them mixed up.
Okay.
Pathways is the consultant that did the.
Yep, right.
The review of the options for us. I'm sorry, I'm mixing them up. So Pathways proposal for the bank stabilization that went along with the road offset. We don't have, I mean, we have their estimated, but it's tied in with moving the road, right?
Right.
So, you know,
If we don't
this
move it,
argument
that's what
that
you're pointing.
that the road, you know, we're throwing good money after bad, that road's been there since the 1700s.
Yes, I realize that.
And it hasn't disappeared yet. So I would argue that, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen with climate change, but I don't know.
What was that estimate? Do you remember, Kathleen?
So moving the road and,
Moving the road and stabilizing the bank.
well, it depends on how many sections, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it depends on how many sections you do. I think that it was what, $1.3 million?
Really,
But that was for
That's my
certain-
memory.
certain sections, and I don't remember the distance that. Maybe it is accurate, I don't know, but.
I would like to see that there was a letter that I think is in the packet suggesting that we might actually benefit also from looking at the banks from Riverside, where we can see how much is the undercut and, you know, maybe get a sense of what's
So
going-
still study it
going
a
on.
bit more before we make a decision on its
just
class.
to inform our discussion, because there does seem to be something that's happening there. I mean, we've only had a couple of small rains, and you look at those cracks that opened up in the last few weeks, it's kind of startling. We haven't had a flood event, it's been a drought of a summer. But that was concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that the road hasn't disappeared yet, well, no, it hasn't, but what we saw out there was indication it's coming. And so,
Right.
and, you know, I suspect there's probably a lot of capillary action beneath that road, there's a lot of soft under. It is deteriorating, and so I feel like I'm missing some of the information necessary to make the final decision on this. I mean, I wanna know, okay, there's this technique that's been suggested, well, for how long? What's the life expectancy? Because, say, for me, the idea of 1.3 to 1.5, I'm not there. That's a lot of money to spend for a relatively short stretch. And I think if I do a cost-benefit analysis, that, in my mind, that just doesn't make sense. I can think of other things we should spend the money on first. But I feel like I don't have all of the information now. But based on a 1.3 to 1.5, I wouldn't support that.
And I guess my argument is just a declassification, I don't think eliminates the need to spend that money.
Okay, then, and one of your suggestions about privatizing the road, maybe, that is not sounding unreasonable to me right now compared to 1.3 to 1.5. But I just have a hard time comprehending, you know, we hear of complaint against poor government spending of money, and this one jumps right to the top of that. Sadly, I mean, and I hate to say it for those who live along it, but it just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think that will be a big part of whatever decision gets made, because there are property owners that need to access their property, and I don't know what happens in that case. You know, if you go through a declassification, I don't know. I know it's a lot of money, but, you know, just like with everything else that we do here, we phase things in and we take it in chunks, and there have been repairs done to that road that have lasted 20 years and been fine, and there's no issues, and they didn't cost $1.3 million either, so.
It's just a volatile situation.
It seems to me that everyone is really either prefacing or ending what they say with "I don't know," and I guess the situation right now is that we're not ready to make a decision, and we need more knowledge and more time, and maybe a fuller description of what our options are.
You've got a number of questions to pose to staff to run down. I think also, I don't know, was clarifying what each of those categories, 3, 4, trail, and even privatization, what are the standards and what are the liabilities, and
And what are the maintenance
is there anything
costs?
that didn't get thrown out? Farhad, did you have any questions that you would
No,
like
it's
staff
just,
to?
my concern is about the cost.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how much are we willing to spend on that piece of road, is my question.
And it's not just the cost, but it's longevity.
Yes.
I mean, if somebody
And,
can
yeah,
tell me
what's
that
the-
this thing
what's
is
the
gonna last
guarantee
for
on it?
100 years, and we're gonna spend the money, that's a different discussion than something that we're gonna spend this money and it's a volatile situation and is liable to be gone in 5. You know, that doesn't make any sense to anybody that I can think of.
Russ?
I just wanted to say that I think it would be good to get a definitive answer to the question of if it's downgraded to a Class 4 road, what would be the town's responsibility? Because I can tell you, I live on a Class 4 road, and the town does absolutely nothing, zero, ever to maintain it in any way,
And it's entirely your responsibility
entirely.
to maintain that so that you can access your property.
Correct.
And it's already a Class 4.
Yeah.
I think what we need are definitive answers with costs.
Okay. All right, everybody. So if there's something that, let's just throw this out too, that if there's something that you think of, just shoot an email to Kathleen and she can add it, because we're in the fact-finding stage and brainstorming, and we need to make sure that all options and information is explored, okay?
The only thing that I brought up at infrastructure that I haven't brought up tonight was just, one thing that hasn't been explored is, I don't think, is landowners' willingness to move the road. So, that was the option that the infrastructure supported from that Pathways proposal. And as far as I know, no one has approached the landowners to even see whether they'd be willing to, change the right-of-way.
Deed the right-of-way,
Right.
yeah.
And if they're not, then
That's a dead end.
very simply makes a decision on that one also, so.
Yeah, I was just going to say that even if we made the decision to classify it as a Class 4 road, we could still decide we're going to maintain it at a certain level. I know that sometimes we make a decision not to maintain roads, but we do often plow Class 4 roads because it's in our interest to do that.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move us on our agenda then to our routine purchases. First one is award of the contract for winter sand. Bill is requesting to accept the recommendation to award the contract to J.P. Carrera and Sons to provide winter sand to the town for 2018-19 season at a quoted price of $9.75 per ton. In his award recommendation memo, Bill reported to us that of 5 vendors solicited for bids for the town's winter sand contract, J.P. Carrera was the only firm to respond. The opportunity was advertised in local media but received no responses. Bill notes that a testing sample taken from Carrera's stockpile by Vermont Testing and Consulting met the town's specifications. This goes back to a mandate that we put in a number of years back to make sure that what we're getting is what we're paying for. Carrera's current price quote is $9.75 per ton compared to its 2017 to 2018 winter quote of $9.25 per ton. Pleasure of the board.
I'll move to award a contract to J.P. Carrera and Sons to provide winter sand to the town for 2018-19 season at a quoted price of $9.75 per ton.
I'll second that. May we not have to use it.
No. Moved and seconded. Are there any questions, comments?
Do we know how many tons we use? What is the implication to the budget?
At 50 cents per ton, any idea of the implications to the budget?
Let me see if I have the, I don't have the RFP that specified the number of tons.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's about 5% jump. Oh,
Well,
What do we,
a dump truck load is about 18 tons. One dump truck load is about 18 tons. So I imagine we go through a lot more than that.
yeah.
At 50 cents a ton.
no, you're right. It's going to be something we have to account for.
Yeah.
Do we have a choice?
I do think that they had held it the same for a couple of years.
To answer your question, Lord, no, I don't think we have a choice.
It's disappointing we don't get other bids on that.
Yeah.
So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, next is maintenance agreement for wastewater pumping station emergency generators. And is to approve a 1-year preventative maintenance agreement with Powers Guaranteed Generators for annual maintenance of 5 wastewater pump station emergency generators for a total cost of $3,595.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded.
Mhm.
Any questions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is approval, purchase order for the asphalt hot box. I thought we bought that
No,
a while ago. Did we talk about it and not?
we talked about it extensively at town meeting.
That's where it was.
We talked about it extensively at town meeting.
Yeah, when I read this, I thought, oh my God, I thought we already bought that.
So I'll make a motion to award a contract to HP Fairfield for the purchase of an asphalt hot box for a total cost of $24,480.
I'll second.
Second, and these have all come through the infrastructure
Yes,
committee,
they
right?
have.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Ross.
Well, the water pumping and the winter sand did not, but the hot box did. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the timing.
Timing. Come on up, Ross. Ross is chair of the Energy Committee, and he's here. We discussed a Middlebury Renewable Energy Policy proposal that the Energy Committee had for us, and we asked Ross to just work on the wordsmithing of that a little bit, and he's bringing it back to us. So with that, the floor is yours, Ross.
Well, it's auspicious occasion since the International
Russ,
Panel on...
would you please use it.
Auspicious occasion, this timing, because the International Panel on Climate Change just came out with a report saying that basically we have about 12 years to get really serious and make drastic changes to the amount of fossil fuels we're burning and the amount of carbon in our atmosphere, or the results are going to be catastrophic. And these are very conservative scientists that don't usually say such dramatic things. And so, quite frankly, I think this proposal is not anywhere near what we need to be doing, but it is a start.
Did everybody get an opportunity to read the policy proposal? Comments of the board?
Well, I think it's an honorable cause, but it still strikes me as being difficult for our department heads. I think there's situations, it strikes me that one of the things that they're already looking at is energy efficiency, but it's not the only element to it. It also is reliability. Some of the things we're talking about is these long-term life cycle costs, but we don't even have those, and I don't know if the vendor can even provide those. I think the basic statement is that we just seek ways to reduce the impact or the purchase and the use of fossil fuels on our purchase of equipment is suffice, and let our people who are responsible for procuring equipment look at that as one of the criteria in there. I would say I'm not a fan of endorsing this right now, but I could be willing to say let's put it out there and let Dan Werner or Bill Kernan or anybody responsible for these purchases beta test it and see what this really means. See if vendors can even do this. I can see some situations where as a vendor they would be completely confused as to what they're being asked for. So rather than something that's a long-term policy, let's try it.
So this has been run by all the department heads. They've all seen this. And it does say provide the town with either a life cycle analysis or an estimate of operation and maintenance costs.
And they may not have those.
They should be able to come up with something.
I don't think so, no, because especially in the renewables and in a lot of the new technologies, we don't know what the long term is. It's a dynamic field. They may not necessarily know what the long term costs are. They may be able to give it to us for 5 years, but beyond that, they may not.
But they may. So.
Well, yeah, they may, but I don't. I think there's a lot of vendors, and I've seen this in some other projects where they won't even talk to you about that.
I know you're concerned about the impact
on the department heads, but I can tell you, if we don't start, and everyone doesn't start doing a lot more to address climate impacts, department heads are going to have a lot bigger headaches than this. Trust me.
We know that. That's why I'm saying, before we put this as a policy, I think we should beta test it. And I know there are things coming along such as a library boiler. We'll have some vehicle purchases. Let's see, without this being a policy, let's let them try this and see if it.
So actually, I've been working with the library executive director, Dana Hart, and we worked with her. We had Efficiency Vermont come in and go through and give her recommendations on alternatives, and she's in the process of actually doing just that. She's getting pricing both for possible looking into wood chips, some kind of a biofuel, looking into using like we have on this building, the heat pumps, and that type of thing.
Okay, so then let's wait and see what the results are of that before we can move endorse the policy.
So, didn't we do some kind of, I can't remember which it was, I'm thinking it might have been a personnel policy where we had it in place for a year and we reevaluated after a year? Didn't we do something?
Yeah, it was 6 months or a year on the personnel policy.
I recall a year, but that may not
Yeah.
be right. Can we do something similar?
It seems to me Nick might be making a distinction between having an official policy and having guidelines, which in a sense, I think, it seems to me it's hard to argue with the goal of this,
Right.
which is to move towards the use of renewable energy in our equipment, and I think that we don't have to rehearse the reasons for this. We all know them, and we accept them. They're cogent. I think what you seem to be raising is this really going to act as a guide that will make sure that we get the equipment that we need in the long term. And I suppose if you had it as a guideline, that staff would be obliged to consider, and then after a period of time, and let's say 6 months or a year, a report indicating how this has worked. And then one may want to even beef it up. I mean, it seems to me we need to be moving in this direction. And so something like this needs to be in the works so that it accelerates us toward this goal, but it may very well be we don't want to put ourselves in a bind that may not, in fact, that may prove dysfunctional, and I'm not sure that that's so, but that seems to be what you're implying.
That's exactly.
And I would hate to see that as a reason not to go with this. So maybe there is something with using a different term and making it not optional, but recognizing that finally staff has to make a decision when they're purchasing equipment and going out for bids and so on and so forth.
To make it clear that it is an important criteria item, but it is one of many. And so I think you're right. It really is sort of a guideline, at least initially, and see what it does, and refine it before we actually turn it into a full policy.
I think Ross got a comment on
I
that.
would just, my concern would be that, guidelines can be ignored. An official policy approved by the board has more strength and to it, and would be something that would be more likely to be considered during purchases by the town.
That's the exact point I was going to make. And we see department heads all the time, qualifying that they couldn't get 3 bids for whatever reason, or they might not be able to, get a comp. But I think that we need the teeth of policy. I do, and I think we need it now. I don't think we wait. I mean, I think we can always adjust policy, but I think we start with this policy. It's been well vetted, I think, in the committee, with the department heads, again with us.
Infrastructure committee.
And here it is again. I think we've got it, and I think we should try it.
And I would say that, the Energy Committee is there to be used as a resource that department heads, if they need extra help, they need some extra people to make phone calls to try to gather information, we're willing to give that a shot.
The Infrastructure Committee looked at this also, right? Any comments come out of that?
I think we had some, but I think they were already incorporated into the final draft that came before the select board, am I right?
And I think
It was pretty minor, and we did make a formal recommendation
you did, you voted to support it.
to support.
Yeah. I was just looking for you to, I read the minutes, so.
Yeah.
That's what came out of
Are there
it.
any
So,
reluctances?
Well, I think there was probably some concerns that you, about staff, but just because something's hard doesn't mean it can't happen. And just like anything new, it's gonna take some time to adjust. And I think I would be in favor, like we've done with other policies, to have a review in a year and see what needs to be done, to adjust one way or another. Maybe it needs to be stronger, I don't know.
the only question I had reading it was the alternative cost seems random, 10, we moved it from 10 to 15%, so that it would be selected if it was within 15%. It just seems like a random number. If it's gonna be random, I would prefer verbiage that said a strong preference to be given to, even if it's a little more expensive or something. So I think in the end, it comes down to an analysis of what fits the town better, given our values, and our stated values have certainly to move towards energy efficiency, as we've been reflected in our more recent facilities, some of our vehicle purchases. And I think that the policy requiring a full review, seeking the alternatives, and looking at life cycle cost to the best that we can, is making us go through that step and making a conscious decision. Personally, I'm comfortable with that. I don't know about having a random number, because we don't have any experience saying that that's what makes sense. It seems like a random selection to me.
Well, actually, all the numbers seem to be random.
Can I just, so you mentioned in your comment, energy efficiency. This really isn't about energy efficiency. This is about
Energy.
renewables.
Renewable
and-
energy,
And reducing
yeah.
fossil
I'm
fuels.
sorry.
So it's-
Renewable energy,
Right.
but.
So typically, I think at this stage in that process of reducing fossil fuels, equipment, vehicles, whatever, upfront cost is more expensive.
It is.
And so we're
So-
trying to come up with some kind of comparison to justify that higher upfront cost, when typically what we approve as a select board is the lowest cost. But we have to move in a direction of less fossil fuel use, which may mean some initial higher cost purchases. And so we need to have the supporting documentation in place for why we're choosing to make that higher purchase. And I think this is
But
a guideline for that, right?
No, this
Yeah,
is,
back to the
this
term
says that,
guideline.
this is a firm 15%. If it's 15%, that
Yeah.
we will select them. That's what I'm not comfortable with.
Well,
I'm comfortable with that a preference would be given to a renewable, even if it's solution, even if it's more costly.
How much more
Gives us the
costly?
authority to make that selection based upon our values, is what I'm saying, where
Right.
to make to select a percentage is so random to me. We might want to do it if it's 20%,
Mhm.
if it's the right thing, but we might
Well-
not want to do it if it's only 8%, if we're talking about, just the idea of having somebody have to feed a wood chip boiler out here for the library, it just doesn't make any sense to me, and.
Well, they have automatic feeders, but,
That's just, to me, in the middle of town, that's like, not something I would support. And so, I don't care if it's 5% more expensive, I don't think that's the solution that gives, to get congested in where we have parking issues and everything else, to even waste time looking at it, to me, it's a waste of time.
well,
So
I guess I feel that, and I would suggest that this idea that it's too expensive for us to stop killing ourselves and committing mass suicide together is kind of,
Ross, you think that whether we use oil or propane or natural gas or chips is going to make that much of a difference on one building in the center of this town?
yes,
I don't
because
think so.
of cumulative impacts. The whole reason we're in the problem we're in now, one person burning fossil fuels in an internal combustion engine seems insignificant, but we have billions of people doing it, and that's why we're in the position we're in now. So now, the same thing has to occur to solve the problem. We
Ross,
need
I
billions
got
of
it.
people to start changing, and if we're not willing to do it, who will?
Well, I think that this really, I think the reason why Article 5 is there is because it's a sort of the figure is arbitrary, admitted, but any figure would be arbitrary. You're saying, the general question is, would you like to spend more? Would you be willing to spend more so that we
Yes.
can move in this direction? And the natural answer is yes. We expect that it's going to cost more. And so then the question is, well, how much more? And say, well, I think this is an arbitrary figure because any figure would be arbitrary. It's not a matter of saying, can you come up with something that isn't? And I suppose the 1, 2, and 3 really take care of it. In other words, you could drop out 4, and you would still have a coherent either policy or guidelines as far as that's concerned. I don't think that there's any quarrel about needing to move in the direction of cutting back on using fossil fuels. I think everyone's agreed on that. The question is how to do it rationally and within the limits of what the town is able to afford. And I think that in that respect, I don't think you really need 4 because I would think that any member of the staff who has the responsibilities for making purchases who read 1, 2, and 3 would know what to do. So I don't think that you really need 4 as far as that goes. But once you get into the question is, how much more would you be willing to spend, then you have to come up with an arbitrary figure, and it doesn't matter whether it's 1% or 100%. It's arbitrary.
I think if we say that this is important enough for us
Mhm.
to reduce fossil fuel, and it's one of the criteria that's used in rating a purchase,
Yeah.
then it can be a matter of the one who reviews it, or the committee that reviews it, will say, okay, this is what vehicle A using fossil
Right.
fuel costs, this is its life expectancy, this is its fuel consumption over time, You can even take it so far as this is the fuel it took to make it in the first place. And here's what we can expect. Here's our maintainability of the vehicle, our reliability of the vehicle, and take it on through. Here is what we have found and presented as a comparable to meet this criteria, or at least close. Maybe it doesn't meet all of them. Maybe we're sacrificing something in
Right.
performance, but we're getting reduction of fossil fuel.
Yeah.
The
But
story will-
those are judgments, it seems to me, that the staff makes.
That's right.
We can't prescribe a rule for every time they're going to have to make a judgment. And I think the point is that what we're saying is we want to move in this direction.
That's exactly right. The story will tell itself. And it may be 8%, it may be 4%, it may be 20%.
Right.
But the story will tell itself. I say sometimes I have seen this, there's a little bit of the pessimist is the optimist with experience. I have seen situations where if a vendor knows that it's a 15% window, it's funny how the price, it may be only actually 4% more, but suddenly the price comes in at 14.75% more.
Yeah.
So it becomes a real risk of putting a hard number
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah.
But if this is one of the rating elements, and I believe it should be, it's a good one, then let's let our professionals who purchase equipment or go through the whole process of purchasing and present with us recommendations, do their professional due diligence, and I fully believe our staff will do that, and let the chips lie.
Well, I think that it's a useful guideline, like number 4, and maybe that's really what the intent was, to have some language somewhere, that gave you, like, what would be acceptable. And I could live with dropping 4, knowing that we did the work and had the multiple conversations with department heads of what we're saying would be the goal, like that they could probably expect the select board to support a choice that was as high as 15%.
So you would go just 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm also valuing the discussion,
Hmm?
that I'm valuing the discussion we've had
The
about
intent
4.
of the policy
The intent, yeah.
is that we're willing to spend more.
Yeah.
We're asking
Yeah.
for the work to be done to bring those alternatives to us.
And so the select board, when you're given a recommendation from a department head for a purchase, they usually share with you the other information on the other options. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the board could decide, whenever it chooses to go with one of those or the other options, even if it may not be the recommendation from the department head.
Yes, we
Is that
could, and
correct?
And
sometimes we do.
I think
Okay.
we've done that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you
And
may be
I'm just
right.
not
As long as they
comfortable-
come to you with all the information,
Right.
then you've got the information to make that, and so maybe you don't need 4
Yeah,
or 5.
I'm just
whatever
not
it is.
comfortable with
Mhm.
with what I feel is a swag at what the value is to us. It may be worth more, it may be worth less. I think we have to look at every particular situation. Because
Here's what I'm gonna do.
25% on a smaller number is not a lot of dollars, but if you're talking a really large
Mhm.
number, 10% may be more than we can budget for.
Mhm.
So it's, for me, if, I would love to see this drop in 4.
Yes, I mean, if I'm, use an example of a vehicle. If the department head comes to me and says, okay, we have these 2 vehicle options, and one is as close to fossil fuel free as possible, and they're not gonna be exclusively, because fossil fuels are used in manufacturing. And I'm gonna say, okay, I see the fossil fuel vehicle, what do I not get? What do we as a town not get by going that direction? If he comes back and says, we don't get the reliability, okay, that's a factor I'm gonna take into account. But if he says we can overcome that, or the manufacturers are expanding the service network, so it won't be a problem in time and we can live with it, then I'm gonna be inclined to go for the fossil-free product. But if there are fundamental flaws in that product that impact the ability of this town and the departments to do their mission, a snowplow that isn't available to plow snow, isn't doing its mission, then I'm going to go against it. Not that I don't want, that I want to, but I have to be practical what we have to do as the town as a mission. But I also recognize the fact, as well do, the manufacturers of these things, whether it's a refrigerator or a truck, are moving this direction anyway, because the consumers are demanding it. The technologies are advancing. Material sciences are advancing. Motor technologies are advancing. Battery technologies are advancing. So that they're going that way anyway. Albeit not as fast as we want, because quite honestly, the technology research hasn't emerged fast enough, but it's moving that direction. And so it will be a factor in our decision, but I'm really going to trust a lot of our department heads as to what their recommendation is for us to, one, achieve a goal of reducing fossil fuel. It might be something in between. There might be a mid-ground that's absolutely ideal, that still allows us to have a reduction in fossil fuel impact, but still provide the mission of the town. And so, sure, we're gonna ask that question, we do. And so, again, it's an honorable direction. I just want to make sure that we're not implementing something that is going to lead to other problems.
Are you interested in making a motion to get us going on this?
If you want me to.
Yes, please.
Okay. My motion is to approve the Energy Committee's policy as a guideline, including sections 1, 2, and 3, deleting 4, with a mandatory review in 1 year.
So you're amending the policy by removing 4.
Yes.
And making it a guideline.
That's fine.
Making a
I second that.
guideline for 1 year,
Yeah.
at which point
Okay.
we've had a chance to go through some purchasing cycles and to see how it
Okay.
works. Refine it, and then we can decide at that point.
I'd second that.
Makes
A
sense.
policy or a guideline?
It is a guideline. We prefer, well, let's have this, I'm open for either way.
Thoughts of the board?
I won't support it as a guideline.
If we're doing a mandatory review in a year, I would be supportive of a policy. Because we're looking for revisions and case studies and how it's worked over a year.
Okay.
This makes everybody do it.
Then okay, then I'll change that. So, a policy of items 1, 2, and 3, and with a mandatory 1-year review.
And I'll accept that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
questions of the board? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ross,
Thank
thank
you.
you for your work on it,
You're
and the
welcome.
energy committees, and thank you for your passion.
We'll see you in another year.
But we really do.
We're gonna see you before another year, come on.
Well, we really do appreciate your effort. It's just that,
I understand. Well, there's a
gotta
lot
make
of-
sure we get it
A
right.
lot of concerns and issues you gotta juggle. Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'll just do a quick review for the board on our quarterly town college lunch, which really wasn't so quarterly. I don't think we'd
We hadn't met since last December.
met since last December, yes. We reviewed the status of the bridge replacement project, and the college offered any help they could do in the public process with Printers Alley, Triangle Park. I think we appreciated their offer, but we are in the throes of that already. The Economic Health Committee discussed the charge and the timeline, and President Lori Patton suggested inviting retail developers to a forum to share insights on attracting retail to Middlebury, and I believe the college is moving forward with that, Kathleen, or where are we
As
at?
you may recall, right after that lunch, we had the news that David Donahue was going to be moving on, and I think that was
Might have derailed that initiative, yes, good point.
But I think the BMP is talking about a retail summit of some sort in January, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe we could incorporate it into that.
Okay, yeah, because I think the idea was to get a lot of the retail developers and get, number one, show our interest, number two, ask what it is to provide feedback for our economic health committee. What are those things that they should be considering that draws retailers to town? We talked about the downtown master plan, gave an update, and the college is acutely aware that it's a question of funding right now, but is pushing to try to get that done. We are likewise pushing to get it done. I think we are in the same path there. Talked about the Cross Street Bridge local option tax surplus and the work the infrastructure committee had started on proposing ways to use some of that funding. The college noted there were some projects that they had mutual interest in, and we're hoping that maybe there would be opportunities to use some of those funds to further some of those projects. And some of those projects are state-funded projects, I pointed out to them, but we are continuing to work that issue. One of the options in the rail platform was on college-owned property near the hospital. They were willing to allow us to continue with that if that had been one of the top selected areas, but from my understanding, I was out of town, but it was not one of the top two at this point. Other than that, we went into some future discussions about transportation, the college as an economic, or education as an economic driver. Victor talked about the college's potential role in education of students of all ages, and adult learning and underserved in the community. And President Lori Patton said that they actually are working on a pilot project of 2 intergenerational classes and potentially expanding those efforts. They're already underway at the college. And then Dave Donahue talked about a recent Addison County Workforce Development Stakeholder Summit and noting that there's a central role that affordable housing and childcare plays in the development of workforce, and the college's intent to further their efforts in childcare with Porter Hospital. And I'm not sure if anything new's come out of that since then. We are hoping to have another meeting in December or we were to close the loop on some things, but
To meet quarterly,
things
have our quarterly meetings quarterly.
things are changing. We don't know how the college's structure may or may not change, so it's a little premature to know where we're headed with that. Are there any questions on any of that?
No, I'm glad to see the review of the discussion, and I'm glad that they're committed to quarterly meetings, and I understand that a lot is happening for all of us, and I do know that in terms of rotation of attendance, at one time we looked at doing it alphabetically so that it was just simple and straightforward, so I just mentioned that again in case that's useful as we're looking at that. I know sometimes we look at topics, but sometimes there are so many topics that any of us could qualify for that it becomes hard to figure that out. So that's just a neutral way of deciding that
It's an
may
interesting way of
be
doing it.
helpful.
Well, we had also talked about new members, making sure that they had the opportunity to go as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when we try to get that back for us, I'll keep you abreast if I hear anything as far as the scheduling on that. Kathleen, year-to-date budget report.
Earlier in our discussion, Heather had a question about how much winter sand we buy. Our budget is $25,000 a year, so a 6% increase for that would have a $1,500 budget impact potentially if we're on budget. If our budget was based on $9.25 for $25,000 worth.
1,500, you said?
1,500.
Okay.
Okay, the budget overall, we are on track this year, trending as we did last year. We have some payments that were made earlier in the year to our agencies and regional organizations, as well as some bond payments that were made earlier this year than last year. But other than that, everything is on trend.
Perfect. Approval of check warrants.
So it's about, if you stick with the $25,000 and you do the different prices, just under 140 less tons of sand we can afford. Just so you know. I'd like to make a motion to approve the total expenditures in the amount of $341,756.82. Of that, $250,571.51 is accounts payable, and $91,185.31 is payroll. For a period of September 26, 2018 through October 9th, 2018.
Second.
You guys are like stereo.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
And thank you to Victor, who helped me get through them
Welcome.
before we had to go to the site visit.
So I have a question about this. Lindsay was the primary, I was alternate, and
You were the alternate.
yeah, I don't know why. I'm happy that you took over, but if you want to take over, I think we should make it formal.
So
you'll be the
I
alternate?
had a meeting with Kathleen, and we talked to, something came up about Lindsay, and Kathleen said she wasn't gonna be here, so she needed someone to do warrant
Really?
report.
Last
And I was standing there, so I said I would do it, because I thought I was the alternate. So,
No, but one more time when Lindsay was doing, and I think Laura or somebody was helping her.
yeah, so,
Yeah. She
So-
could reach out to me anytime.
Yeah.
I don't know if she knows that I'm the alternate. I don't know.
I don't know that she maybe even knew that she was supposed to let,
Okay.
sorry to step on your toes.
I'll make
No,
a-
that's fine. But
We're not firing you yet.
no, I would rather somebody else take over. But I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. I think she probably, it was so last minute probably. that she-
Well, and it was just a matter of coincidence.
Sure,
Heather said, do
sideline
you
me
think
like that."
Lindsay needs a ride to the recreation center? And I said, well, no, because she's not coming to the meeting. Oh, by the way, we need somebody to cover the warrants. And Heather said, I'll do it.
Okay. Okay, next time.
Okay, Kathleen, Town Manager's report.
Pleased to report that the board's August 28th letter to Vermont Agency of Transportation, Rail, and Aviation Program Director Dan Delabrere seeking $1,200 in funding to plant 40 sumac and evergreen trees on the embankment of Forest Ridge Drive was well received. The trees have been ordered and should be planted before the end of October.
Great.
Board member concerns. Farhad.
Nothing good.
Heather.
I think I've said them all already.
Nick?
Do we have any idea where we are in the Exchange Street Route 7 roundabout process? We just had another accident there.
Yeah,
Another close call. Unfortunately, it was
yeah,
not.
I saw that
Yeah,
too.
I met with Adam Luigi on that and on the sidewalk. Adam's a little swamped right now.
There's staffing.
Staffing issues and so he's supposed to be getting back to me an update. He was gonna find out where it's at the state level. And he's got two of the property owners left on Exchange Street to have his initial meetings with for right away. And I'm gonna help organize those meetings so we can get them done and start moving forward. So we have to get the right-of-ways done in order to proceed with getting approval from the state, and then submitting for bid. So if we want to get it's all hinging, spring construction is hinging on getting the right-of-ways done timely here, so I'm working with Adam to try to move some of those things forward. I owe you an answer on that. I owe the college an answer on that, and so I've asked Adam to find out where we stand on that.
Good, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, as we all know, periodically rises to the surface again when we have a close call. And so I appreciate that.
Also, on that roundabout, I know it's not a priority right now, but can we do something meanwhile, like having some signage on Exchange Street about a dangerous intersection coming up? There's no signage that warns the drivers about that intersection coming up. Or maybe we can lower the speed limit on Route 7. We can't do that, I guess.
One of the things he did point out is we also were talking, one of the concerns was that would halt any opportunities for growth in Exchange Street, and it does not, but any future development, that's subject to the Act 250, there is a fee to pay in towards that roundabout. And then from the time that happens, the first fee that's paid, the state has 7 years to have that construction done. So we're in the process of getting our permits to build a facility. If they hit me with that $2,000 or whatever the fee is, then the clock starts, so.
Maybe you should pay, somebody should pay the fee so the clock has to start.
I joked with Adam about that. So anyways, yeah, that is a stop sign, though, so
But that stop sign, we talk about it all the time, about that stop sign. We had, if there's a fatality, then that's too late for us to do something, right?
What is the speed limit right there? It's already 40, isn't it?
It's 50.
40 at that point.
Is it?
It's
Yeah,
50.
just above that development that.
Because right at the top of the hill, is it at the top of the hill?
No, it's 50 at the
Right
intersection.
on the top of the hill is when it starts,
Just
it
when
ramps
change.
up. Yeah.
So maybe
So it's
we
40
should.
there? It's 40?
It's at the top of the hill, it transitions to 50.
well,
So
part
when
of
you
the
get to
problem is the
intersection,
sight
it's 50.
lines.
It's
the
50.
Sight line is a big
Right,
issue.
but if you make an attempt to slow traffic down,
40.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think we've had those discussions about East Middlebury too, and trying to change the speed limit, and they just seem resistant to any efforts to change speed limits. That's what we've learned over and over again with our requests, right, Kathleen? And that's a residential
Speed limit or
neighborhood.
speed bumps? I think that was speed bumps we were trying to.
It was
do.
speed limit too.
Speed limits,
Even speed limits?
yeah, going into the village.
In fact, it seems we've had some years ago the discussion about that stretch.
We also particularly petitioned the state about North Pleasant Street in the vicinity of High Street, and they reviewed our request for reduction from 35 miles per hour and denied that request. But I don't think we've done one further north on Route 7 in the 50-mile-an-hour zone.
Okay, so that was the one that we had denied.
it
Anyway,
doesn't seem
Anyway,
like
we
that.
can try, but.
It doesn't seem like that
seem-
big of a request to move the 40 zone down to about like Mountain View
Another
equipment.
half a mile, yeah.
Right. Concerns?
I have a question, actually, and comes largely because I forgot my hearing aids tonight. How are we progressing on the acoustics of this, or the sound system? I thought we were.
I've included a request for $10,000.
much?
$10,000 in the capital budget for FY20. We'd like to move the project ahead further, and we'll try to identify other resources to do that, but for now, it would be an FY20, if the request is approved.
Honestly, there's so much in our packet that already references anything that I would say. I would just say, look at the packet. And I'm really glad that we have the Friday updates communication that goes out to people that highlights some of that. But I would just say, if anybody's watching tonight, you know, that they should peek at our packets if they want to see like the extensive work that's being done by so many committees and groups, you know, so really, it's robust, and I'm impressed.
A lot of work going on. Laura, would you be willing to take us into executive session? We
I
need to
will.
talk about contracts.
Okay. I'm in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law. The following two motions are in order prior to entering into executive session. In accordance with, well, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contracts in public.
Second, sorry.
Wait for you
Sleeping
to
it,
second.
sleeping it over there.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss contracts and under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.